Join me today as we look at how we can bring vintage blingy goodness into your wedding. Adding the timeless beauty of historical and vintage inspiration to your upcoming wedding will bring elegance and sophistication to your special day. What could be more romantic? I've been around for quite a while and I've seen a lot of weddings in my day. But the ones that stand out the most to me are the ones that have vintage touches. It adds a certain je ne sais quoi that makes the day truly unforgettable. And let's not forget about the practical side of things. Adding vintage elements can also save you money. Many of the things that were popular decades ago can now be found at a fraction of the cost of brand new items. Plus, they already have that charming patina that only comes with age, just like me. Weddings have traditionally been a very binary, gendered space. In reality, there's a much richer diversity of gender expression. You don't need to conform to antiquated gender rigidity, that kind of vintage thinking we don't need. Whether you choose a dress, a tux, or a handful of balloons in strategic places, wear what makes you feel fantastic. You have all of time and space to choose from. So choose a theme from a specific historical era, such as the Roaring Twenties or Victorian England, and incorporate elements of that era into your ambiance. Whether it's a casual backyard wedding or a posh affair in a remote castle, find your unifying colors, textures that can be carried throughout every aspect of the wedding. Choosing a theme will unify the ambiance for your wedding. Do you want a glam formal affair, or are you more laid back, so want something a bit more casual? There are no rules that say you have to stick to one time period. It's your day, and you can be as magpie as you like. Really, the great thing about wedding day is you get to make it your fantasy, your dream. The day is all about your love, so shine on, my beautiful sweet potatoes. It all starts with the dress. You walk down the aisle and all eyes are on you. Probably no detail is more important than the dress the bride wears on her wedding day. Cake is nice, but antique lace is simply perfection. You probably have ideas swirling around in your subconscious if you haven't been actively planning and thinking about this day your whole life. So close your eyes and picture yourself walking down the aisle. What do you see? What do people see when they look at you? History gives us wonderful examples of wedding dresses. Any time period can influence the clothes you wear on your big day. There are no rules that you have to be strictly historically accurate unless that's your jam. If you're looking for a reason to feel like a fairy tale princess, look no further than your wedding day. With thousands of years of beautiful gowns to choose from, you'll be the vision of elegance from head to toe. From the top of your crowned head to the soft slippers on your feet, you will be the vision of a regal lady of the manor born. The medieval gown falls gracefully and moves when you walk. This dress molds to the figure with elegant lines. The cut of the gown is simple. It gives you a fine canvas to play with. Embroidery, beading, appliques, and woven trims can zhuzh up the dress to make you glow. And when you add Tudor or Elizabethan gowns with their sumptuous fabrics and intricate decorations, the options are really endless. These gowns lend themselves to decoration and display of sumptuous fabrics. And if any of the wedding guests vex you mightily, you can simply declare, "Off with their heads." Although, on second thought, that might spoil the romantic mood. The Regency period is the era of Eliza Bennet and Mr. Darcy, of the mad, bad, and dangerous to know Lord Byron, of Bridgerton, which sparked the Regency core wedding trend. Life for the upper class was fun, frivolous, and fashionable. Regency-era women's clothing was all about beauty, grace, and femininity. Stiffly boned bodices were gone in favor of softer stays, and the body regained its natural shape. Gowns were gathered just under the bust to emphasize the lines of the body. Short jackets, called spencers, could be worn over the lightweight dresses. You can wear short, puffed sleeves with a high waist and loose, gauzy skirts. You can choose pastels or warm, rich jewel tones. You can be inspired by the colors of Pompeii, like celestial blue and Etruscan red. So find your Ms. or Mr. Darcy and stroll off down country lanes, hand in hand. It's hard to pin the Victorian fashionable lady into one silhouette, as it changed greatly throughout the period. So look for styles that appeal to you and go from there. Corsets shaped the body and changed over time. Early in the period, skirts were full all the way around. As the century wore on, the fullness migrated to the back and culminated in the exaggerated bustle skirts before shrinking back down at the end of the century. But it was Queen Victoria's wedding in 1840 that gave us the tradition of wearing a white dress. She wore a plain satin dress and an orange blossom wreath with a lace veil. It was simple compared to the trends of the day. It was designed in the style with a tight bodice that hugged the natural waist and a voluminous full skirt held out from the body with crinolines and petticoats. Until this tradition took hold and the wedding industrial complex convinced us to buy an expensive dress we never planned to wear again, most women wore their best dress. Only the very wealthy could afford a special dress for the day. An expensive single-use dress is about as conspicuous consumption as you can get. The Edwardian era is the age of Downton Abbey and leisurely games of croquet on the lawn. Women's clothing was marked by a return to a more feminine silhouette. Women still wore corsets. The corsets gave them an S-curve shape with a low, full chest and curvy hips. The it girl of the day, the Gibson girl, put her hair up and wore a dress with delicate lace and ribbon trim adorning high-necked blouses with long, flowing skirts. Mini gowns featured long trains and had an abundance of beautiful fine lace and luxurious fabrics. A lace parasol is a perfect accessory to carry to keep the sun off your delicate face. The Edwardian era saw the introduction of a wide brim hat that was often decorated with feathers and lace. It was the perfect accessory for a romantic outdoor wedding. Let the speakeasies and jazz bands bring you back to the era of elegance and decadence, the 1920s, the Jazz Age. Bring out the moonshine and the ragtime band and dance until the sun comes up. Hemlines began to raise above the ankles for the first time. So scandalous, so shocking. Gran most certainly does not approve and thinks you should be married off post-haste, because that will surely settle you down. Waistlines dropped below the natural waist to sit low and loose. Women flocked to the new ease of dress and tossed the corset in favor of soft lingerie. Dresses were cut into straight, boyish, loose, tubular garments. There was a simplicity to women's dress that was new, but clothing was embellished with embroideries, feathers, beads, fringe, and just about anything that would stick to fabric, so you can serve champagne in pretty glasses and dance the night away. The 1930s brings a different vibe that you can draw from the pared down and futuristic aesthetics. Hollywood glamour favored silk satin gowns that flowed like liquid silver. Add a red carpet touch and have an elegant evening affair with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Joan Crawford's white organdy party dress in Letty Linton in 1932 was widely copied as a wedding gown. The oversized, ruffled sleeves are unmistakably 1930s. Bridal magazines appeared in 1937. This allowed women to see into the glamorous world, and fashions were quickly adopted. Advancements in clothing technology gave women fitted bras with molded cups, and the female figure was no longer shaped by the garment, but garments were shaped by the body. No matter what style you choose, the fashions of the 1930s are all about showcasing the beauty of the female form and making women feel confident, sophisticated, and stylish. The mid-20th century was a time of change and upheaval. The clothing and aesthetics of the time also gave you a wide range to choose from. During the war years, fashion was limited by rationing, and post-war fashion rapidly evolved over the next few decades. In the late 1940s, Christian Dior introduced his new look with nipped-in waist and wide, voluminous skirts. After the decade of deprivation, women were ready to splash out in elegant designs. Another look that rose during the same period was the narrow sheath dress. As the decade wore on, the cut became less structured and less form-fitting. Ball gowns with huge skirts were very popular as wedding dresses, high collars and sweetheart necklines. Modesty was very important, especially in church weddings, so long sleeves appeared in opaque or sheer lace. Strapless dresses came into fashion during the late 1950s. Boleros or short jackets could be worn during the church ceremony and removed for the reception. Wedding dresses were often tea-length and made of tulle. This created a charming and feminine look. And toward the end of the decade, wedding gowns became simpler and lighter. Step back in time to the swinging mod style of the late 1960s. The decade started out with the new look-inspired dresses, but over time the hemlines raised. Skirts narrowed and the waistline began to move up until we have the classic 1960s A-line dress with an empire waist. Daisies ruled the 1960s and were often seen on wedding dresses and in bouquets. By the end of the decade, dresses were narrow and columnar. Youth culture influenced weddings and often shocked poor grand to no end. Even miniskirts were seen on women as they walked up the aisle. If you are looking towards the early 1960s, then an A-line shift dress is perfect for a fun, casual wedding. Add a pillbox hat with a birdcage veil for the perfect it girl look. Hippie culture influenced fashion and a natural boho vibe became very popular. So peace out and turn on. The 1970s were just around the corner. The 1970s were a decade of roiling politics and social change, and this was expressed through dress and the many different aesthetics that developed. Vogue magazine declared that there are no fashion rules now. For the early 1970s bridal look, go for a maxi dress with a boho vibe. Look for flowing fabrics and bright colors like bold oranges and bright pinks. And don't forget the flower crown and statement earrings for a fun and flirty look. Puffy sleeves with a high neck, such as gunny sacks dresses, were super popular. Fabrics were softer and more draped than they had been in the previous decades. Later 1970s disco-inspired dresses were sleek and fluid and body-conscious. Wear a silk jersey knit dress or a jumpsuit with big feathered hair, play Bee Gees music, and dance under a spinning mirrored ball. There were few clear wedding trends, as brides chose from wide varieties, from Laura Ashley's prairie dresses to tailored pantsuits to punk. The 1980s were a time of epic wedding dresses with puff sleeves and massive ball gown skirts. And if there was one wedding that captures the zeitgeist of the time, it was the wedding of Charles and Diana. The world watched, and almost overnight, Diana's dress became the must-have look for weddings. I would be remiss if I didn't share my own wedding from the 1980s. Always being a rebel, I made a dress that was more influenced by the Edwardian era than the Dianean. Warm buttercream silks that my brother brought back from a trip to the Middle East made the dress very special. In those days, silk was hard to find and extremely expensive. I kept the lines of the dress simple, and the sweetheart neckline was also a bit of the 1970s gunny sack dresses that I loved. Your own wedding should be an expression of your personality and your love for your partner. Don't believe the glossy bridal magazines or the wedding industrial complex. There really are no rules other than the ones that you decide to have. So make your day full of love and vintage goodness. Make it all about your love. Well, my darlings, I hope this video has given you some inspiration for your special day. Adding a touch of history and vintage elegance can truly make your wedding unforgettable. So go ahead and let your imagination run wild and make your day a true reflection of you and your love story. Remember, it's your day and it's all about celebrating your love and your love of vintage bling. Please drop me a comment to let me know what kind of vintagey goodness you would like to see in your wedding or that you had in your wedding. Or are you like me and your wedding is vintage now? So share that story with us. And until next time, I bid you joy.